At the beginning I kind of talked about the whakapapa of individualised funding or person-directed funding, and it does have a whakapapa. It goes back a long way, so we can't forget the past, but what does the future look like? So any opportunities to engage, support each other. I know, Michelle, you've probably got some ideas about that from where whānau can support each other who have been not champions but have probably been doing IF for a while and know some of the tips and tricks. And just give us feedback if we're coming, I've worked in community for most of my life, so if we're coming across as being too bureaucratic or the system is too hard, hopefully you can find a way to tell us that and give feedback on what would be better. Really open to all of that. I'll hand it over to my colleagues.
Yeah, the NASC, in this case Takiwātanga Trust, have always had a conversation with people before we meet them and have talked about the outcomes people are trying to achieve, what their aspirations are, what their needs are. And so we usually have some pretty robust information about the person's situation and what they're trying to aim for. We then support them to put together a plan around how are you going to do that. Given the amount of money you've got, given what it is you're trying to achieve, how can you make the best use of this funding to try and do that? And that looks different for everybody. That plan is put in writing, it's agreed by both people, and a copy goes back to NASC, and then that's reviewed annually or more often if needed. And that becomes quite important when it comes to discuss some of the discussions down the track, and in particular with purchasing and linking purchases back to needs and aspirations and outcomes that people are trying to achieve.
For me, the difference is, so when I think about individualised funding, I don't think of it as a support, I think of it as a way of funding that support. So in terms of respite, there are many different ways that you can get respite. So carer support is more of an informal way of getting respite. It's I find it's a lot easier for families, especially when they're really, really stressed. Because it's a paper form that you fill out and you chuck it in the post, whereas individualised funding comes with a much higher responsibility. And so there you have to do a lot more paperwork. There are contracts involved. You've got to make sure that you get the invoices through fortnightly. And because it is an hourly wage as opposed to a financial contribution, I find that parents will worry about it a little bit more, because obviously if this is someone's salary, then that's a bit more stress on them as opposed to, I'm paying you some babysitting money.
To bear in mind that if you're wanting to pay a person as opposed to spend the money on an activity or make a purchase that's going to support the disabled person, then you'd need to be entering either a contracting or employment arrangement with the person. So that's one of the key differences where there's a person involved. But yeah, they are both forms of respite in and of themselves.
It's probably important for whānau to understand the difference between the purpose of the two. So carer support is in the name. It's there to give the primary carer or the person who's providing most of the support within the household the break. And I think sometimes that might get a wee bit lost. By default, the disabled family member might have the break as well, but the primary purpose is for the person who's providing all the goodness and assistance and support to have the break. Whereas IF respite is about the disabled person having the break, and by default, the whānau or the person providing the support gets to have the break.
NASC perspective, I'd say we are like any service where we have also been impacted by health, and it shouldn't take that long. 6 months is a very long time to wait. I believe our wait time is usually about kind of 8 weeks. But if people are ever struggling to get in contact with us, we do have a website, we do have an info@Takiwātanga email, and that's usually sometimes a bit faster to make contact with us. And yeah, obviously we want to try make things as easy as possible and get supports in place as quickly as possible. And yeah,
There is the option to what we call self-manage your payroll. So there's typically a couple of options. Either you subcontract your IEF host to manage your payroll for them, and they keep record of leave, they pay the tax, the ACC employer levies, KiwiSaver contributions, all that sort of thing, or you choose to contract. A good reference point is probably the IRD website. If people Google IRD Individualised Funding, there's some really good guidance on that page. And as hosts, we would require to see the letter provided by IRD that somebody has registered as being an employer. And from there, when they submit invoices to us to be paid on their behalf so that they can pay their staff, that's the evidence that we need to put that through, and it then becomes their responsibility to liaise directly with IRD about those payments that I mentioned.
And then we skipped the question about the host. So what is the host? Why do we need a host? We might have tackled that quite a bit a while ago, but can we expound that a little bit?
Takiwātanga in his, her, their own time and space.
Being cool. The kids that are in his class that have autism, super cool.
Autism's about a different perspective on life.
And once you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
There is nothing wrong with having autism, you know. The hardest thing with autism and intellectual disability and that is sometimes accepting it.
They bring change. They are non-judgmental.
Being different ways to thinking.
I'm autistic. If you don't look autistic, it is a very ableist statement.
Autism is a label. Forget the label and just live as normal life as possible. Autism is about hope.